Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be talking to you about the Accelerative Integrated Methodology, or AIM, for the next 45 minutes to an hour. And if you notice, there's a chat here, so please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. I'm Wendy Maxwell. I am the founder of AIM. I developed AIM in my classroom in Toronto, Ontario, many years ago now, and I have developed the resources for AIM. I continue to teach, and I train teachers on the implementation of the methodology in different parts of the world. And these are some of the kits that I've written to support teachers in using AIM. We have a lot of different resources for teachers and the different places I've presented in. Just going to let a few people in here. And for the work I've done, I've also received a few awards, as you can see. I think one of the most important things that we keep in mind when we think about ourselves as teachers is we put a lot of work into our teaching. And I think language teachers, almost more than anyone else, perhaps, it's not an easy job. And for all the work we put in, I think we have to just sort of reflect sometimes and remember that what counts is not what you're teaching, but actually what the students are learning. There are many teachers who I know spend years and years of teaching, say French, for example, who have come to me and said, oh my goodness, year after year, my students still don't seem to be learning much. So what AIM's goal is to try to help teachers actually help students really acquire the language, to really learn the language. So I'm going to show you a little video, and while we're doing that, if you wouldn't mind just letting me know where you teach, if you are a teacher right now, if you've used AIM before, or if you're brand new to it, and what languages you teach. That would be and what grades too. Whatever you'd like to share with the group, that would be really, really helpful. Okay, so here we go.
Now, everyone will do the song
Sorry, did you want that in the chat, or do you want us to just unmute? I wasn't sure.
Yes, in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
To the monde fantastique. La clase toma. Yo tomo.
Una persona importante o importante. Importante. Entonces, yo no hablo con tú. Okay.
Contigo.
Oh, sí.
我要找一个歌手，小鸡住在农场里，一天小鸡出上学，一个小国家在小鸡的桌上。怎么了？哎呀，天塌了！怎么了？你去哪里？天塌了！天吗？
All right, so hopefully you got a bit of a sense of what, just trying to turn on my camera here. Doesn't seem to be working. Let's see here. My apologies. Let's see, there we go. So you saw some elements of AIM there. A teacher is gesturing, the students are speaking a lot. There's some drama, some rhythm and rhyme and music and choreography in AIM. But what we're going to do today is go through the major components of the methodology and those that are supported by research. So thank you, the two of you, Libna and Jessie, for letting me know what you teach. So you both teach high school, and one French, one Spanish. That's great. If anyone else would like to add, oh, Lisa, thank you. Mississauga, great. Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board. Oh, Core French. Okay, well, that's great. Certainly AIM was developed in that context, in that location, so it's very good for that too. So, all right, so AIM aligns very well with the CFR, which if you're Canadian, you know this is a really big push here in Canada because CFR focuses on the development of overall proficiency through an action-oriented approach. In the actual guidelines in the US also draw from the CEFR because the focus is on 98% target language or so. So the what we want to do, what both AIM and the CFR wants to do, is to develop authentic proficiency, to create curriculum content that focuses on the can-do statements that really align with who the students are, with their age, the interests, and their needs, which is certainly what AIM does, and to develop quality resources to ensure successful language acquisition through effective teaching methods. Of course, that's AIM's main goal, and to support teacher education and training for success. So that, again, is something that we do extensively. So AIM, or the Accelerative Integrated Methodology, is very much a comprehensible input-based approach. Almost everything we do is there to ensure that the students rapidly understand the language, because the faster they can identify what those arbitrary sounds are, whether it's ni hao, whether it's bonjour, whether it's buenos dias, these are all arbitrary sounds that humans made up. When we put a gesture to it, buenos dias, ni hao, bonjour, hello, the students now start to come to understand what that arbitrary sound means. So that's one way that we ensure that the input is comprehensible, but there are many, many more in AIM that we use that I'm going to share with you today. We have a content and language integrated learning focus with AIM. So as a former immersion teacher myself, I realized the benefits of teaching language through another subject area. And so, of course, in immersion, I taught science and social studies and math and language arts and phys ed and art all in French. But in a core French program, I only had 30 minutes a day. So I chose a literacy and arts-based approach as my content to teach the language. So the students are learning more than the language itself. They're learning choreography, they're learning songs. Well, we do a lot of songs anyway as language teachers, most of us. They learn some theater arts skills. And don't worry, you don't have to have any drama experience. I have none. But we do a little bit of that. And then we do work a lot on literacy skills, the development of an understanding of the writing process and the editing process, and even out to book publishing. So, but our primary goal is to develop authentic proficiency. So where is AIM used? Well, primarily in Canada and the United States, in Australia and the Netherlands. Oh, welcome, Moonjung. And you teach Korean and English. Perfect. In Taiwan. Welcome. You're here from very far away if you are over there right now. I'm not sure what time it is, but oh, well, if it's the same as Australia, I think it's morning there, perhaps. All right, and then AIM is also used in various other parts of the world to a lesser degree. It started in around 2004. We developed our first main resources for AIM, and AIM started in an independent school in Toronto. That's where I first developed the methodology, and it sort of took off through the independent school system and then is used much more widely now in and throughout the public school system in Ontario, the rest of Canada, and the world. There is a large percentage of schools in the Netherlands that use AIM, and those schools were studied through the University of Groningen in the northern part of the Netherlands. And they found that the AIM classes the students in the AIM classes outperform students in other programs in all language skills. And this particular research on the effectiveness of AIM was voted the best research paper in the Journal of European Second Language Acquisition about a year and a half ago. And last October, the Dutch students were rated the best in the country in the 100th percentile. And then students as well in various parts of the United States are also winning national competitions. There is research that's been done on AIM. So I'm just going to stop this for just a moment because it does not seem to be. Oh, okay. So the research that was done at the University of Groningen, you can find here in, if you want to grab it from this QR code, or I'm happy to share it with you in an email as well, if you wish. So today I'm going to go over the main AIM strategies that are supported by research and that you'll find in that research paper that I just, well, actually, I'm going to share with you in a little bit. So one of the strategies, and you probably noticed, you perhaps noticed the teacher was using in the video clip, is that we make sure that we expose students, especially at the very beginning of their language acquisition process, to a high frequency functional vocabulary. And we call that pared down language. Of course, language is huge. Dictionaries are thick. What language? How do we know what words we should teach the students? Well, some teachers use a thematic approach. In my opinion, it's not as effective because we focus on a certain number of words and then we move on to some other words, then we moved on to some other words. And once we're into the third theme, well, we've forgotten what the first theme words were because we didn't repeat them enough. So AIM works on a hierarchical approach where we're constantly revisiting very high frequency words. Also, as opposed to a thematic approach, AIM focuses a lot on verbs. Thematic approaches focus on nouns to a great extent. Of course, we all teach other words as well, but I believe that focusing on verbs is extremely important during the beginning stages of proficiency because we are a moving, living, breathing society, and we need to talk about what we're doing rather than naming objects. So we do focus a lot on verbs. For French teachers, we simplify the verb by using the regularized stem of the verb that works orally with je, tu, il, elle, on, tout le monde, and la classe. For Spanish, we simplify it in a similar way, but because we bookend the subject and verb ending. So yo quiero, tú quieres. So we can just delete or not say the subject, and we just have quiero or quieres for the different forms of the verb. And for English, of course, there isn't as much variation in the verb form, so it's a lot simpler. We use cognates whenever possible. And of course, the words we select are very, very high frequency. And a lot of research has gone into this, both action research in the classroom and researching high frequency language studies. And we really hone in on those high frequency words for students as they begin. The other strategy, and this is the primary strategy for comprehensible input, although there are many more, but this is the sort of the most visible and significant strategy, and that is the gesture approach. So when we are teaching a new word sound that is an arbitrary sound like cour or might be li or le, or a word that doesn't make any sense if you don't speak the language, we can attach that sound to a gesture. So we have cour or corre or run. We have écoute or listen or escucha. And so what we're able to do here is help students come to understand the word rapidly And then because the teacher is inviting the students to say the word, once they recognize that word sound connection and meaning, then we ask the students to be doing the speaking. So instead of saying to my students, bonjour, maintenant la classe commence, hello, the class is beginning now, I will say, maintenant la classe commence. So I am gesturing and the students are doing the speaking. So students who are shy or strong or weak, they're all getting equal practice. So you'll find a much more homogeneous class. Everyone's supported, no one's singled out. It's a very effective way of getting students the practice they need in a very short time in my classes that were 30 minutes or less a week per day. And then what is happening here now is the students are seeing, hearing, saying, and sometimes kinesthetically also embedding the vocabulary. This makes comprehension and recall easy because, and especially recall, because what is happening is students are storing the information about every single word in different parts of the brain, where they see, where they hear, where they say, and where they kinesthetically embed. And so when you store that information in different parts of the brain, studies have shown that it really sticks effectively and therefore makes recall much, much easier. So let's have a look at the difference between a non-AIM class, teacher communicating, and an AIM class.
Aujourd'hui, je suis très excitée parce que la semaine prochaine, je vais visiter mon ami qui habite à Winnipeg. C'est vrai, je suis née à Winnipeg et toute ma famille habite à Winnipeg. J'ai 2 sœurs et j'ai ma maman et mon papa qui habitent là. Alors ma maman est tellement contente.
Okay, let's watch now an AIM class and a teacher doing the same type of communication and talking about her weekend and what she's going to do with her students.
Pardon? Winnipeg. Excellent. Alors, je vais continuer maintenant. Est-ce que tout le monde sait ou ne sait pas que je suis née à Winnipeg? Je sais. C'est vrai. Je suis née là-bas et j'ai aussi des amis que je peux.
So as you can see, the teacher is not speaking. She's just whispering along with the children. The students are the ones who are doing the speaking. So they're getting extensive practice with the language, even pre-verbally, before they're able to speak on their own. They're getting practice with accent, they're getting practice with syntax, and of course, verbs and other vocabulary in context. So the gesture approach and the pared down language. So this is the way I would teach, or this is the way I would use the language with my students. Let's do maybe a little bit of Spanish here. Buenos días. Perdón. Buenos días. La clase empieza. Begins. Empieza ahora. Entonces, la clase habla, bla, 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 habla en español. So I'm gesturing for the students to do the speaking. One thing I did there, as you noticed, I said, ahora, now, was it with ahora? I forget which one I used it with, but I will sometimes, if I feel the word isn't evident, if the gesture isn't evident, identifying what the word means, then I will use a little bit of sandwiching where I put the English between the two target language words. The other strategy that I use is to ensure that students are exposed to the language in context. This is one of the things I find in a theme, or I did find when I was using a thematic approach, was there was very little contextualization of the vocabulary. There was not a deeply context embedded environment, and this is essential for students when learning a language. So I cannot think of anything better than a literacy approach, a story-based approach, but with the added benefit of repetition of the vocabulary because they are rehearsing for eventual performance. And this repetition for a purpose through theater and drama draws the students in to the language so incredibly well. They become the characters. They live the lives of the characters. They talk in the voice of the characters, so that it reduces inhibitions. There's so many benefits to this, in addition to the repetition that naturally occurs when one is rehearsing for eventual performance. And then we take this story and we do a lot with it. So in association with the story, we are also threading musical component, rhythmical and rhyming component, and choreography as well, all integrated using the similar words from that story. And I love this quote from David Booth, who was one of my mentors and actually my professor at OISE U of T, excuse me, many years ago. He said, "Children new to a language find in a story context for understanding. It's not wordless that command their attention, but the lives of characters that fill the tales they read or listen to, and how painful it must be for those children alien to a language to sit day after day without feeling connected to what's happening in the classroom. And yet, through storying, how quickly they enter the activity, making sense of what is happening, building their own versions, listening, telling, retelling, talking about, reflecting upon, and responding." And really, this summarizes a lot of what we do in AIM. So let's have a quick look at what are these plays that I'm talking about that we work on. This is a step one for Spanish, just a little excerpt of one of the plays.
Esta es la historia de Marco, el mago. Marco es el mejor mago del mundo y él sabe que es el mejor.
Soy Marco, el mejor mago del mundo. Todo el mundo piensa que mi magia es muy buena. Pero yo no hago mi magia para todos. Oh, no. Solamente hago mi magia para las personas importantes.
Yo no sé dónde está el collar de la princesa. Yo lo busco y lo busco, pero no puedo encontrarlo. ¿Puede usted ayudarme? Yo no quiero unas medias. Yo quiero el collar. Usted no puede ayudarme y usted no es el mejor mago del mundo.
Okay, here's a little excerpt from a French play.
Le guépard arrive à la maison du lion. Il parle avec lui.
Monsieur Lion, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? Il ne pleut pas depuis longtemps. Tout le monde a très soif. C'est un gros problème. Est-ce que tu peux nous aider?
D'accord, guépard. Tu dois aller à l'arbre Ungali, un arbre magique qui est loin d'ici dans la forêt. Tu dois dire le nom de l'arbre et après ça, l'arbre peut aider les animaux. Dis à l'arbre que tout le monde a soif parce qu'il n'y a pas d'eau.
So the stories that we have are full-length theater pieces. They're not little stilted dialogues. They're literacy for the students to be exposed to, and they engage students in the language of the story, and the setting and the characters and the plot all contribute to helping provide this wonderful context for students. Now, the stories themselves are filled also with a lot of emotional language, and a lot of studies have shown how important this emotional language is. In addition, some of the stories also contain patterning, rhythm, and rhyme. But not only do the stories sometimes contain this, but also we explicitly offer this to students through the many songs and raps that we have, and other ways that we help students enjoy the language through rhythm, rhyme, and patterning. And one of the ways that we do this is by working on opposites, les contraires or los opuestos.
Maintenant, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire? Dire et danser les contraires. Tout le monde a un partenaire. Frappe des mains et on commence. 1, 2, 3, 4. En haut, en bas. En haut, en bas. Fini. Commence. Fini. Commence.
And we have several videos like this, both in French and in Spanish as well. Not yet in English, but that's to come. Now, I try to find as many ways as possible to help every type of learner acquire the language. And I do find that teaching words by their opposites is a very effective way to bring meaning to both words. So, and there are a variety of ways that we practice opposites, and this was one of them. Another strategy that we use that is used in conjunction with the work on the story, but also in general, is the specific use of total and partial questions. So total questions contain the answer within the question, and they're the simplest question. Partial questions do not contain the answer within, and they're questions like who, what, why, when, where, and how many. We want to maximize language production in a scaffolded and supportive manner. It is very difficult for students when asked, what do you like to do on the weekend, for example, to understand how to respond to that if they have very little vocabulary in the target language. They might understand the question, but then they have to try to think of how to come up with a response. So the way that we scaffold this for the students is to ask gesture for the students to say, so they're practicing the question as well, questions that are based on the story that they come to know very well. This really gives them a lot of confidence and supports them so that they're able to, of course, very soon answer the question, qu'est-ce que tu aimes faire pendant la fin de semaine? Or ¿qué haces durante el fin de semana? Or what do you like to do on the weekend? So let's just practice a few of the ways that I will ask. So I, in English, might say, well, it's a little different in English because the total question is actually just a statement. So in French, it's est-ce que le petit cochon fait une maison ou un livre? Does the little pig make a house or a book? In Spanish, we do the statement, and in English, we do as well. So the little pig makes a house or a book. And so the students will just answer, the little pig makes a house. So rather than doing the inversion and does, we keep it really simple at first so that students just come to understand the question easily and can respond easily. And then we take it the next step up afterwards. It's very, very important that we help students to be successful every step along the way as they learn the language. So in addition to questions, we have many other language manipulation activities that scaffold that comprehensible input and output. And many of these are based around the story that the students come to know very well, starting with just a closed sentence where they have a sentence from the story. For example, from the Three Little Pigs, the first little pig makes a house of straw or wood, and then they just fill in straw. And then they're practicing reading the word or and wood as well, and just simply putting in the correct word to fit in that sentence. And then we move up from there to more and more and more challenging sentences and questions right out to at the end of the kit where they're writing a retelling of the story in their own words. So there's a lot of cooperative learning that goes on with AIM. We do a lot of creative writing in this methodology as well. And we always want to develop oral language skills in tandem with written. So students are always working with a partner. They're not just writing in silence. They're discussing as they write. They're supporting each other and practicing their oral language skills as they do so. So here's a little video.
Oui. Il faut te mettre en salle et déchirer.
Est-ce que ça, c'est la même histoire, mais dans les mots différents? Oh oui. Dans les mots différents?
Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire?
Est-ce que tu fais en partenaire?
Saute.
Beaucoup. Est-ce que tu fais ça?
Très pauvre.
Est-ce que tu fais ça?
Est-ce que c'est sans? Non, ça c'est juste une
Tu fais ça?
Louis commence à marcher dans la forêt. Il espère trouver une amie dans la forêt. Elle a demandé
En train de... Oh, excellent. En train de... En 3 mots. En train de...
Après, il a triché avec un accent aigu.
So the purpose of this video is just to show you that students are using the target language only. That's really a requirement in an AIM classroom, even if it's 30 minutes a day or less. We give them the skills to speak only in the target language, and that's an expectation. So when they're working on their written activities, they're discussing as they write, helping each other, and doing that all in the target language. We do a lot of creative work with the language as students develop language skills, and this is a little rap that some grade 8 boys wrote in French.
Aujourd'hui, la classe commence et tout le monde pense et danse. Quand j'entre dans la classe française, je ne parle pas en anglais. On parle en français, c'est fantastique. La Bengali a bien appris. Je parle en français, c'est très très bien. Je fais les actions avec mes mains. En anglais, ça c'est vrai. Mot. Word.
So I just find it so wonderful to see these grade 8 boys in an inner city school who typically don't often like French very much, really enjoying themselves. They've created this rap on their own based on the template that we create in AIM, and we offer, you as a teacher to work with your students with the AIM created raps, and then we teach you how to help students write their own rap, what the process is, and they end up writing their own, which they're very, very proud. And this teacher filmed this rap, and the whole class can sing the raps by the students as well. Another strategy, well, I mentioned this before, is that we really work on creating an immersive environment. I really believe that one cannot learn a language if one is not speaking the language. It's not very easy. And in the limited time I've ever had in Core French, if my students weren't speaking in French, they would not become proficient in the language. So target language only is very important to me. And there are a lot of systems in AIM to support this. One of them, the major one, is the card system, but I also have other ideas and strategies that I use, and we share that information we share all this information in our workshops. Scaffolding is essential, I believe, to success. I think, to just skip up our expectations beyond what is possible for the students is only frustrating for the teacher, and not only frustrating for the teacher, but of course for the students as well. So I want to ensure that every step along the way, the students are able to handle the activity and are successful at it so that they can build a foundation for language proficiency and move up and up and up rapidly as possible. Because the faster students can become proficient in the language, the happier they are, the more positive they feel about their language learning experience. And everyone is just having a good time, a successful time in the class. And there's a lot of course, focus and engagement if this can happen. and much fewer distractions and discipline issues, I find. I teach grammar in a very, very different way. I make sure that it's comprehensible. I have a 3-step inductive approach to the teaching of grammar. I make sure that at the very beginning, the students actually see, hear, and even kinesthetically embed aspects of grammar. So for example, in French, we have the il gesture for he and the elle gesture for she. And then everything related to feminine and masculine, because French, like Spanish, is a very gender-based language with lots of, with the nouns having an associated gender. So we have le for the and la, feminine, for the feminine. And then we have un, masculine, one, and une, feminine. And it's the same in Spanish. It's a similar thing. And then for infinitives, well, we have, for example, ella corre, él court. And then we have ella quiere correr. So we add the R ending. In French, elle veut courir. We have the R ending for the infinitive. We also have plural forms that we gesture. We have past tense forms that we gesture. In English, we have I walk, I am walking. So we have the ing gesture here for the present progressive. So embedded in our gestures as well are elements of grammar. And eventually, we move through the 3-step inductive approach, and that what I was showing you there was the first step, where students visualize elements of grammar. But as proficiency improves, then we expect that students will talk about the language in the language, and the 3rd step of our inductive approach is the use of what we call a rap rule, or règle en rap in French, as you will see.
Le numéro. Tout le monde lit avec madame. 1, 2, 3. Est-ce que tu peux chanter avec il? Qui voit une faute dans la phrase numéro 1? Oui.
Chante doit être chanté parce que après peu, c'est l'infinitif.
D'accord. Tout le monde, on va répéter la règle. Et c'est la règle numéro 1. Tout le monde avec moi. Après, à, comment, pour ou de, doit, aime, veut et aussi peut. C'est on va, où je vais, c'est l'infinitif qu'on doit utiliser. Fantastic.
So of course, this règle en rap rule, is not applicable if the students aren't already speaking in the language, because its purpose is to correct any errors and help them realize how the language works and the language patterns. So what I do is I take elements of the language and I patternize it, take the elements of the language patterns and I reduce it down to a rap. So in this case, the rap contained all the words, verbs and otherwise, that signal that an infinitive must follow. So a lot of educators have used AIM, whether it's high school or junior high or elementary, primary teachers, various different languages. This is Gary Karkin, who taught English to adults in the United States with AIM. And he found success with it, with them. There are many other strategies that we use. I'm going to go over the last few here. Another one is that, I mentioned this before actually, that if you can teach with an emotional component to your teaching, you can enhance language acquisition by up to 500 times more effectively. So through our stories, which are filled with emotion, through the gestures themselves, which I make sure I encourage teachers to ensure that they are saying the words with lots of emotion, like the and fantastique instead of fantastique. And instead of saying corre, 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 we do corre, corre quickly. So we make sure that the students are really coming to understand with that emotional context, it really does help students acquire the word very, very quickly if you can include that. And if you can have the students in your gesture reviews say the words with that expression as well. AIM is a hierarchical approach. It is not a thematic approach where we move from one set of words to another set of words and really don't revisit the first set and move on to a third set and don't revisit the second and first very much because we're now on the third set. The way AIM works is we start with high frequency words that we teach the kids in the first day. And then the next day we add some more high frequency words and repeat the ones that we taught in the first day. And the next day we teach more high frequency words and then we repeat the ones that we taught in the first 2 days. And we continue like this over and over and over, building an awareness of new words, adding new words to the vocabulary, but always returning back down to the highest frequency words that we introduced first throughout every kit that we have. And so this is how the students don't miss out on practice or miss out on that important pleasant repetition of words that they must have, because every word has a certain number of repetitions that must occur for it to be acquired. Some more, some less, but every word needs to be repeated over time in order to actually really be acquired. Another strategy, nonverbal communication and positive reinforcement. There is a huge power in the there is great power in positive reinforcement, and I'm sure as teachers we all know that. But AIM takes a very sort of, I would say, intensive or what's the word I'm looking for? Explicit efforts to ensure that we are incorporating positive reinforcement throughout everything we do. It's also a way that we tell students what to do through positive reinforcement. And the goal is to create a very supportive and nurturing and positive environment of cooperative learning where students know that they are not singled out. They're not going to, have to be asked to in front of the whole class to say something on their own, especially at the very beginning. Later on is fine, but at the beginning. And so they feel very secure and supported with lots and lots of positive reinforcement. Another strategy that I use is I limit my activities with the whole class to, and even with the partner group activities, to a maximum of 10 minutes. And for younger students in the primary and early elementary grades, even lower, so even 5 minutes or 6 minutes. And then I change it up to another type of activity. So we might read a story, then we stand up and do some gestures. Then we sit down and I model a rap. And then well, that would probably be the 3 activities that I would do in a 30-minute class. So we're doing something different each time. It really is so important to keep that brain alert. If we're doing the same thing over the course of more than 10 minutes, especially in a foreign language classroom, we will start to lose the kids often. So that's a very important technique that we use as well. So these different strategies that I've been discussing can be found in this piece of in this document with the research studies documented there in that particular paper. So you're welcome to take a screenshot of that, or I can also, of course, send you the link if you are interested. So the results. AIM develops oral proficiency very well. It's one of the more difficult things that I have always found historically before AIM to develop with my students. But because students develop oral language proficiency so effectively with AIM, they tend to develop written language proficiency very rapidly as well, especially in the case where we share the same alphabet, same sound and symbol relationships across the 2 languages. So from English to French or English to Spanish, that's very easy. And so this is an example of one of my core French students after 80 hours of instruction doing a story retelling of our story, The Cat and the Moon. Now, story retelling has a specific purpose, is to develop circumlocution. trying to say what we need to say with limited vocabulary. So the students have to retell the story that they have come to know well, that is the story for the kid, but they cannot repeat any sentence as it's found in the original story. They have to retell it in their own words. They don't change the story, but they cannot repeat sentences. So they have to reformulate the sentences. And eventually it becomes a true literacy activity where they come to understand how to create a good and detailed story. But the first story retelling is very simple. They just have to retell the story in their own words without repeating any sentence directly from the original. So this is the story written by my grade 1 student in Toronto in Core French after about 80 hours of instruction. Now, we also do the same activity for right through up through to high school and adult. It's exactly the same process. So here we have a Spanish student after 75 hours of instruction, well, this is Mississauga from Ontario. And this student, of course, because she's in grade 11, has a greater knowledge of literacy skills in her first language. And so the story retelling is much longer, more detailed, better attention to spelling and grammar. And so, of course, we'd expect more of a grade 11 student, but still first year of Spanish. Now, we have something very different where now we're working on different characters. So this is a Japanese student in Australia whose first language is English. And of course, those stories, when we're moving from, English to Japanese or vice versa, or Korean to English, they're going to not be as long because the students have to learn another sound symbol, another alphabet. So, but still, I find it impressive that this Australian teacher was so successful in getting a student to write in grade, I think she's in grade 7, within a couple of years of AIM. And then again, back down to grade 7 in Core French, another example of a story retelling, again, much more detailed than the grade 1 student could do. I think it was about 8 pages or so. Now, after we do our story retelling, the other literacy activity in AIM, major literacy activity, we have some minor literacy activities, but we have 2 main projects, and that is the retelling and the extension. So this is an example of a story extension of one of my grade 1 students. It's an extension of the story Les Trois Petits Cochons, and I put it up because everyone really knows the story of the 3 little pigs. So what happens next? What happens after the wolf falls in the soup and runs out of the house? So these students wrote, Après que le loup sort de Les Trois Petits Cochons, il va à la maison et dort et se réveille et marche à l'Arblaze et court et marche. Monsieur Loup est très fou et content. So if you're not understanding it, she said after the wolf goes out of the 3 little pigs' house, he goes to his house and sleeps and wakes up. And then he walks to Loblaws, which is a grocery store, and he runs and he walks. And Monsieur Loup is very crazy and he's very happy. Le loup frappe à la porte de la fille amie. Il dit à son ami, est-ce que tu veux danser avec moi? Oui, je veux. Je aime toi. Le midi, est-ce que tu veux aller à ma maison? Le loup dit, oui, oui, je veux. Le cochon est ici, dit le loup. So the wolf knocks on the door of his girlfriend. He says to his friend, do you want to dance with me? Yes, I want to. I like you. The friend says, do you want to go to my house? And the wolf says, yes, yes, I want to. Oh no, the pig is here, says the wolf. So now they're afraid of the pig because he was scared of him, I guess, from falling in the soup. So anyway, the story continues. I won't read the whole thing, but there's lots of repetition. This is the student's own unique story where they can take the story where it ends, wherever they want to go. And so again, this is grade 1. One of these students had me in kindergarten with AIM, and the other student, it was her first year of French, 30 minutes a day. We do other activities for, especially for older students. This is a student from Missouri, second year of French instruction with AIM. We invite students to read some of our AIM readers or other stories, other books, and they write story retellings based on those once they become familiar with the story retelling process. This is a story written by a grade 8 student from Missouri who, instead of writing what happens next, she wrote what happened before. So in the high school series, the AIM High School series, Veux-tu danser is the KIT Step 2. And the student wrote what happens before the story, what led up to the story. So she wrote about 1,000 words, a 1,000-word story with her partner leading up to the story for the KIT, describing the steps that led up to it. Okay, so we're almost finished here. I'm just going to show you a video of a student, an AIM student, engaging in a DELF-like test. For those of you who are familiar with the CFR, DELF is a testing process through CFR to determine language proficiency levels, A1, A2, B1, B2, and so on. We have created a DELF, as I say, a DELF-like test. It is not approved by DELF, but it's a proficiency test that just examines what students are able to do in the language. And these are included in our kits. I'd just like you to maybe notice, you can write in the chat if you wish, what you notice about this AIM student based on the strategies that I mentioned. Can you see any that the teacher was using, or things that the student says that might tell you this is an AIM student? So grade 5 student, Ontario student, who's had AIM instruction, I believe, for about 2 to 3 years.
Bonjour, comment t'appelles-tu?
Je m'appelle Saskia.
Comment ça va?
Ça va bien, merci et toi?
Ça va très bien, merci. Quel temps fait-il aujourd'hui?
Il pleut.
Est-ce que tu es un garçon ou une fille?
Je suis une fille.
Est-ce que tu aimes ou n'aimes pas chanter?
Comme ci, comme ça.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Ça, c'est un crayon.
Est-ce que c'est un chien ou une maison?
Ça, c'est un chien.
Est-ce que le chien court ou marche?
Le chien court.
Et est-ce que c'est un garçon ou un chat?
Il est un chat, mais peut-être le chat est un garçon.
Est-ce que le chat saute ou mange?
Le chat mange.
Qu'est-ce que tu vois ici?
Je vois un garçon qui joue de basketball.
Qu'est-ce que la fille ouvre?
La fille ouvre une porte.
Pourquoi est-ce qu'elle ouvre la porte?
Parce qu'elle rentre à la maison, mais peut-être elle va à l'école.
Qui est-ce que tu vois ici?
Je vois une fille et des parents, et les parents disent au revoir à la fille parce que la fille va à l'école.
Et où est l'école?
L'école est à Toronto parce que ça c'est l'océan.
Où est ton école? Est-ce que ton école est à Toronto, à Paris?
Mon école est à Toronto.
Comment s'appelle ton école?
Ça s'appelle Maven.
Et est-ce que ton école est grande ou petite?
Mon école est très petite.
Combien de personnes, combien d'élèves est-ce qu'il y a à ton école?
Je pense 150.
Oh, très bien, tu sais combien de personnes il y a, bravo. Qu'est-ce que ta mère ou ton père dit quand tu vas à l'école?
Ma mère et mon père disent ciao ciao Mickey Mouse.
Ça c'est très amusant. Et qu'est-ce que tu leur dis? Qu'est-ce que tu dis à tes parents?
Je dis rien.
Oh, tu ne dis rien, tu ne parles pas, tu es silencieuse. Est-ce que tu aimes ou n'aimes pas aller à l'école?
Comme ci, comme ça.
Comme ci, comme ça, je pensais que tout le monde aime l'école. Est-ce que tu aimes lire? Est-ce que tu aimes écrire les histoires?
J'aime lire et écrire les histoires.
Très bien, merci Saskia.
Et j'aime les singes aussi.
Oh oui, tu aimes les singes, oui, je me rappelle ça. Et ton singe s'appelle Ifa, n'est-ce pas?
Oui.
Et tu aimes faire des robes pour ton singe. Tu aimes coudre les robes pour ton singe.
Oui.
Merci.
De rien.
Au revoir.
So, any thoughts you'd like to put in the chat, or even you can turn on your microphones about what you're seeing with respect to the proficiency and how the teacher is asking the questions, how the student is responding? Any thoughts at all on that?
She's very fluent, very relaxed, and while communicating with her teacher.
Yes, she was confident and pretty proficient. She's having a good time.
Yes, having a good time.
Yeah. A nice connection between the teacher and the student. That's what we find with AIM, that it's very easy in the target language to develop a lovely rapport with the students. That's really one of our main goals. And the teacher was asking total questions and partial questions. The teacher, you could see if you understand French, that the student was almost exclusively responding in complete thoughts. That's one of the strategies we work on with AIM, because we want to maximize vocabulary use. And that's why we get these very long and detailed stories from the students, because they're used to speaking and elongating their sentences, which is what she tried to do, adding details, which is very nice. So yeah, that's a core French student, 30 minutes a day of French after about, I think it's 3 years. So in order to implement AIM, it is important to be supported with training. We really find that teachers thrive and join our community of AIM teachers when they come to a training. We have our virtual summer institute for French immersion, and Spanish coming up this July. We have our Winnipeg workshop, live in person Winnipeg workshop for core French and French immersion teachers in October, the beginning of October, and our Vancouver Fall Institute on Friday, October 24th, which is the PD Day, the provincial PD Day here in British Columbia, and Saturday, October 25th, also for French teachers. I offer an online gesture practice in the fall to help teachers really experience what it's like to be a student over the course of 10 lessons. And while they're starting to implement AIM, it's a wonderful level of support where they can join me and we can discuss and they can ask questions. And I take them through entire classes over those different 10 sessions. So we have many different resources to support you, and you can see elements of those resources in our 2 AIM free lessons. If you want to have a look at those, we have them for French and for Spanish. You can get those on the website as well. And for the resources, we have kits for teachers to use, and they contain absolutely everything you need to implement the methodology. From the teacher's guide with 85 lesson plans, we have student activities books that are photocopyable, that once you purchase them, you don't have to buy anything else. You have posters and image cards. You have access to our digital portal with all of the digital resources, the many, many videos of the songs, the plays, the raps, the dances, the gestures, the projectable posters with the audio, the e-reader of the story that you're working on, read out loud with highlighted text, and logins for your students so they can share their learning at home. So all of that comes in a kit that you would get depending on whatever grade you teach, from kindergarten right through to adult. We have entry points at all the way along. Now, we do have a lot of ways for you to get in touch with us. You are familiar with our website because you signed up for today's session. We have our AIM Facebook page. We have our, apologies for that error there, our AIM forum called Parler avec Pauline, AIM Facebook group, not just for French teachers, for any AIM teacher. I post on Twitter and Instagram. We have the YouTube channel with many full videos and shorts and gesture videos there that you can have a look at if you're interested, and you can follow us on any of those if you like. Do you have any questions today about anything at all that I have talked about? Will I expand to German? Good question. There was a school in Berlin that was interested in developing a sort of a pilot for German. I haven't spoken to them in a while, and there was another teacher who was also looking at doing that. German, because we're very sort of North America centric, we don't have a lot of demand for German with AIM, but I'm happy to get back in touch with the school in Berlin that was looking at that, because it would have to be a collaborative project. We're a very tiny company with very limited funds, and we'd have to kind of work with a school that's very interested in having the AIM for German, so that we can sort of collaborate and working on the cost of the resources and so on, cost of production. Any other questions? It does take a lot of work. Although now that the template is set for one language, it's easy to adapt in a way to another language because we have things set up. But the adaptation does take a while because every language is unique and the gestures will be unique. So yeah, it does take a bit. Yes, Moonjun, you have a question.
Yes, I have a question. You just showed the kids writing and retelling the story, and I see that some words they haven't learned, but they are used to speak. So they just I see that they wrote as they listen.
Yes.
So
that's right.
When they really learn that word, for example, like la fille, like a girl. Yeah, she just wrote FEE.
Exactly. Most of her day is in English, so she's transferring her knowledge of English and her knowledge of the sound of the word in French, fille. So even in grade 1 English classes, students are starting to write using emergent writing. So they're not spelling all their words properly, even in their own language. So this is very common. We see a lot of commonalities across the languages, in their language skills. So the first grade 1 student I showed you actually made many fewer spelling errors because she probably was a good writer in her first language. Of course, this doesn't last for 12 years. Students, over time, with practice and exposure to those same words over and over and over and over again, refine their knowledge of spelling over the years until it's just as natural as if they were in English, becoming good spellers. We work on sounds in French. We have little sound readers now that focus on different sounds, especially the ones that are more difficult, like the E, I-L-L-E sound, and on, but all that isn't a very difficult sound for students to come to understand as O-N. Yeah, that type of refinement, because students are writing so much and reading so much, it's picked up very quickly by most students. But of course, you're going to get a range in any class of students. And you're very welcome. So Lisa said, my school purchased program many years ago, but it wasn't used over the past 10 years. Oh, that's too bad. I'm starting to teach FSL in September. Which play should I use? Well, you can make it very simple for yourself by using one story for a lot of different classes, and then you only have one prep. Of course, your expectations, as you could see from the stories, can be very different. Grade 1 might write only 3-page story. Grade 7 might write a 10-page story. So we can have different expectations for the different grades, even if we're using the same story. So now, if you're starting with AIM, you would always start with a step 1 kit, because the step 2 kit assumes that you and the students know the 500 or so gestures, the words of the pared down language, and the different activities, how to work with total and partial questions, and so on, because you want to build on that as you move up through the kits. So you start with a step 1 kit. So for grades 4 to 6, you could probably do the most popular kit, which would be Les Trois Petits Cochons. For grades 6 to 8, we do have an entry-level kit specifically for junior high, which is called Le Garçon qui joue des tours. And it's a really popular one with that grade level. The story is a little more challenging for that grade. And the story itself is a little more appropriate for their level. So that's how I would recommend, Lisa, that you begin with, you can, if you like, you can do Les Trois Petits Cochons for all of them. I wouldn't recommend Le Garçon qui joue des tours because it is a little more challenging for grade 4s. Some teachers use it with grade 4, but I always try to err on the side of it's too easy because I can always make my activities more challenging. So that would be my suggestion. And yes, in Ontario, it'll be 2 plays per year. So I would do Le Garçon qui joue des tours and Comment y aller for grade 6 to 8, and Les Trois Petits Cochons and Comment y aller, the same second step kit for grade 4 to 6. That's what I would recommend. But please get in touch with me. Thank you, Livna. Please get in touch with me by email if you have any questions. You can reach me. Well, you have my email because I sent the invitation. We can set up a meeting if you have specific questions that's just easier to chat about. I'd be happy to help. And I hope to get you started with AIM so you can see how wonderful it is to find that success that you can get with the methodology, even just starting with AIM, not talking about 3 years or 2 years later. And Susan, you are going to be teaching French in Montessori. One of the more recent places I taught was a Montessori. And you teach CASA, Junior CASA, and Senior CASA for half hour each, between 4 to 8. The free lessons, they're only 2, so it's really just for a couple of days. So yes, you could give it a try. There's a bit too much there for the little ones, but you could pare it down to just do a little bit of that for them. So certainly if they're ages 6, 7, or 8, you could definitely do those lessons. But age 4, 5, maybe do half a lesson and repeat it a little more. So yes, you could do those 2 free lessons with those grades. The rap is included, the gestures are included for you to practice. Yes, so Moonjun, actually AIM was taken to Korea. We took AIM to Korea. Must be almost 10 years ago now, and someone wanted to represent us there. And one of our representatives, I went there and gave a workshop, and then someone came over named Edie. She gave workshop to teachers for English, and it ended up that our representative didn't decide to continue with AIM, but I would love to see AIM used there. So yeah, perhaps we can discuss. We had a professor who was very interested named Jung-Ryul Kim, who came to Canada and gave a workshop to teachers here about ESL and Korea, and he brought me over there actually. Yeah, it was a lovely connection, which it didn't really continue, but yeah, I would love to reestablish that. That would
what university professor is that? Jung-Ryul Kim?
It was in Seoul.
Seoul University?
Yes, but I don't know if that's the name of the university.
Oh, okay.
So, but it was in Seoul. I could look it up for you. I could find it. Yeah, but it was Jung-Ryul Kim was the name of the professor. Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yes.
If you have multiple languages at the school, does it work using AIM in all of those languages? Does it become a bit too confusing?
I know some schools who've taught French and Spanish with AIM at the same time to the same students. It actually is a bit of a benefit because the students, many of the gestures are the same. So if they learn one in one language first for a little bit, and then the other language, well, you don't need to contextualize a lot of the gesture because they know what it means. So it's actually beneficial. I mean, a lot of young children learn 2 languages or 3 languages at home. So it would be something similar. They're just learning. Although in this case, it's the same gesture, but just, associating a different sounding word. So yeah, it has successfully, I know, been used with French and Spanish in some schools here. So, and I think in Australia, I have heard that it is used. I mean, AIM is well established actually in Australia. So I know there are schools that use it for Mandarin, Japanese, and also Spanish a little bit, and more French as well. So I'm sure that some of those schools are using it for different languages.
Yep.
Students. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And oh, Jessie, thank you. Okay, so Jessie's gone. And Lisa asks, how do I know which titles are in the Step 1 kit? Well, I can send you, I'll send everyone in my follow-up email with the recording. I will send you, let me see, just Lisa. Yeah, French. So I will send you the French kit chart so that you can see all of the step 1 stories. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different step 1 stories starting at kindergarten, grade 1 and 2, right up through to adult. So I'll send that over to all of you. So, well, thank you very much for all your questions and interactions. It's been a pleasure to speak with you today. And hopefully, oh, that's so great, Lisa. That's fantastic. And Susan, I thought about doing a more simple song. It's only one day I'm teaching as an occasional teacher. Administrator is giving out. Oh, that's very nice. Yes. So Susan, if you get, so Susan, let me just make sure you're doing. Yes, Susan. So yeah, if you get the free lessons, there's the rap in there. La classe commence en français. Ouvre la tête, enlève l'anglais. Je mets l'anglais dans ma poche, c'est vrai. Et je parle seulement en français. So you can do that little rap slowly at first and just a cappella with your kids, but eventually you can show the video and do it with them. You know, it's not what I would use with the little ones. We do have different songs and raps for the really little ones for French, but certainly the age 6 to 8 could learn that one pretty quickly. Mine have. Oh, that's just so great if you could use AIM at your school. Yes. So, and you can share this recording with your administration as well if they're interested, or I'm happy to meet with them, of course, to answer any questions they might have. So, good. Okay, well, thanks again, everyone. If there aren't, if you still have questions, you can always, yes, it is fun. You can always reach out to me by email. We can set up a time to talk if you wish, or just correspond by email. So I'll be sending you a recording of this session and just reaching out. I'll send the kit chart and information about kits as well. So merci.
Merci. Thank you so much, Wendy. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And hopefully talk to you and see you at a workshop sometime. Au revoir.
Wow.